Welcome to this explainer. Today we are embarking on what is literally one of the most epic evolutionary journeys in the history of our entire planet. We're going to trace the phenomenal, against all odds rise of the plant kingdom. We'll start by looking at those incredibly simple, single-celled aquatic life forms, and we'll follow their structural and biological upgrades all the way to the complex, vascular land dwellers that eventually formed the very first forests on Earth. It's a wild ride.
It really is a totally mind-bending question, isn't it? I mean, how exactly did life make that seemingly impossible leap from the safety and the buoyancy of the open ocean to surviving on harsh, dry land? Think about what had to happen. What evolutionary technologies literally had to be invented for plants to suddenly stand upright, to find nutrients in the dirt, and to reproduce without being completely submerged in water?
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. 1. Sorting the green world. 2. Algae, the aquatic ancestors. 3. Bryophytes, the plant amphibians. And 4. Pteridophytes, conquering the land. Section 1. Sorting the green world, from superficial traits to DNA. Now, you might be wondering how we even know all this. Well, our classification of plants hasn't exactly always been perfect. The earliest systems, like the one from Linnaeus, were highly artificial. They basically grouped plants by superficial traits, like, a simple leaf shape. But since leaves change based on the environment, close relatives ended up being separated. Later on, Bentham and Hooker moved us over to a natural system, looking a lot deeper at internal anatomy. Today, however, we use phylogenetic classification, and this is the absolute gold standard because it groups plants by their actual evolutionary family tree, tracing everything right back to common ancestors. But what happens when the fossil record is just missing? Well, scientists turn to a pretty incredible modern toolkit to make sure they're sorting nature accurately. Numerical taxonomy uses computers to crunch hundreds of observable traits all at once. Cytotaxonomy literally peers directly into the cell to examine things like chromosome numbers and structure. And chemotaxonomy actually uses the plant's unique chemical makeup to solve family mysteries. These tools are absolutely crucial. They allow us to accurately map the journey we're about to take. Moving right along to Section 2, Algae, the aquatic ancestors. Okay, consider the staggering number, 50%. At least half of all the total carbon dioxide fixation on Earth is carried out by algae. Half. Before they even thought about moving to land, these simple aquatic autotrophs were, and frankly still are, the heavy lifters of our planet. They form the base of aquatic food chains and constantly pump vital oxygen into their environment. And hey, they aren't just some abstract ecological heavyweight. They are deeply integrated into our daily human lives. Take commercial products like agar, which we get from red algae like Gelidium and Gracilaria. We use it to grow microbes in labs and, even to prepare our ice creams and jellies. And on the more extreme end of human innovation, there's a unicellular algae called chlorella. It's so incredibly rich in proteins that it is actually used as a food supplement for space travelers. Honestly, no way, right? Space food? So we can essentially break these aquatic ancestors down into 3 main families based on their color-giving pigments. The green algae get their vibrant color from chlorophyll A and B, and they store their food as simple starch. Then you have the brown algae, which use a pigment called fucoxanthin to thrive in different light conditions, and they store complex carbohydrates. And finally, the red algae. Equipped with phycoerythrin, they can survive in deeper, warmer marine waters. So their specific pigments literally dictate where and how they live. And the physical variety of these algae, it's honestly mind-blowing. On one end of the spectrum, you've got these microscopic single-celled colonies, just tiny. But then, on the completely opposite end, you have massive brown kelp forests that branch out and reach staggering heights of up to 100 meters. That is huge. But despite this massive difference in size, remember, they're all ultimately confined to their wet habitats to reproduce and to survive. All right, Section 3, Bryophytes, the plant amphibians. Bryophytes, so think mosses and liverworts here, are beautifully described as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. And why is that? Well, while they evolved to actually survive on damp land, they are still entirely handcuffed to the water for one absolutely crucial reason: reproduction. You see, they lack true roots or stems, and their male reproductive cells, the antherozoids, literally have little tails. They physically have to swim through water droplets to reach the female egg. So they live on land, sure, but they essentially mate in the water. Now, even though they might seem like this kind of evolutionary half measure between the ocean and land, their impact on our planet is just immeasurable. Bryophytes are crucial ecological pioneers. Alongside lichens, mosses are the very first organisms to colonize bare rocks. They literally decompose solid rock over time, creating the actual dirt, the substrate and soil needed for higher plants to grow later on. By forming these dense mats on the ground, they also absorb the impact of falling rain and prevent soil erosion. And economically, well, species like sphagnum moss provide peat, which we've used for centuries as fuel and as packing material because of its incredible capacity to hold water. They basically set the stage for the whole shebang. Which brings us to Section 4, Pteridophytes, conquering the land. So here is the absolutely crucial point of this entire journey. Pteridophytes, which include things like horsetails and ferns, are evolutionarily the very first terrestrial plants to possess specialized vascular tissues. We're talking about an entirely new biological technology. They developed xylem to transport water up from the ground and phloem to distribute nutrients throughout the plant body. This new internal plumbing system was a real game changer. It meant they were no longer restricted to just those damp, humid patches hugging the shoreline. And because of this amazing new internal plumbing, the plant body could suddenly differentiate in ways those simple mosses never, ever could. For the first time in evolutionary history, we see plants like ferns developing true roots to dig deep into the earth, true sturdy stems to hold themselves up, and distinct, large leaves to efficiently capture sunlight. But this great evolutionary leap wasn't just about plumbing. It was a fundamental restructuring of the plant's entire life cycle. In the earlier bryophytes, the main plant body that you look at is a haploid gametophyte. It's simple, it lacks complex organs. But in pteridophytes, the dominant everyday phase of the plant shifts completely to a diploid sporophyte. This shift is exactly what allowed them to build those true vascular tissues and highly differentiated organs, ultimately ensuring their survival away from the water's edge. So from microscopic single cells just floating around in the ocean, to the first mosses clinging to wet rocks, all the way to the deeply rooted vascular ferns standing tall on dry earth, the plant kingdom has just relentlessly pushed the boundaries of life. But as these vascular pioneers marched further and further inland to eventually build Earth's very first massive forests, they were moving further away from the water that birthed them. So what entirely new evolutionary challenges do you think awaited them in the deep, dry interiors of the continents? That is a fascinating question, and one that leaves us perfectly primed to explore the next great chapters of plant biology. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning and keep exploring.